Alright everybody, welcome to a new video. In this video, I want to discuss something in detail that I am asked about often, and that is the inner temple. I want to put it into context on how to use it, the purpose of it, why it's so important, how you can mix it, and why you should mix it with your magical practices, your rituals, your prayers, etc. The inner temple is the nucleus. It's the fundamental building block, the core of my health practice. And anyone who wants to follow my system effectively really needs to ensure that he or she becomes well-versed, or not necessarily well-versed, but well acclimated to the inner temple exercise. You have got to travel into your inner temple so that you can start interacting with it, and in doing so, learn from the inner temple. The inner temple is a sanctuary of sorts where you can escape the stresses, obligations, and bullshit of the day in the matrix, and you can enter into a peaceful, serene state where you can finally shut the overactive aspects of your mind down and tune in to the more real, organic, actual you. You see, we're dominated by the day. We are dominated by our obligations. We are dominated by our tasks, our jobs, our payments, and our bills, and all this other stuff. The inner temple serves an infinite amount of purposes, but one of the greatest things about it is that it allows you to exit your normal way of thinking. It allows you to cool your mind down. And in many ways, shapes, or forms, ladies and gentlemen, when you start to practice the inner temple and enter into a more serene state by doing the exercise, the more you train your mind to go into the temple and become calm, the more that's going to integrate into your daily life, and suddenly you'll find things working more smoothly in your waking life when you are working or when you have bills to pay. You might find it easier for you to solve issues and problems after you have spent sufficient time in your inner temple. Because the inner temple will literally teach you how to calm the fuck down. It'll teach you how to solve problems more efficiently because you'll be using more of your mind. How would I put this? There is not just 1, 2, 3, or 4 reasons as to why the inner temple is important. There are an infinite amount of reasons why it's important. And those certain things you're only going to be able to discover by actually going into the inner temple and experiencing it. So the inner temple is interesting because it's not like a mechanism that is the same for everyone. And what I mean by that is it doesn't just have 1, 2, or 3, or 4 purposes like I mentioned earlier. The inner temple interacts with you based on your own unique needs. It communicates with you because it is you. It's your higher mind. It's your subconscious. So to say that you can only do this and that, or you can only learn this specific information or that about the inner temple, that would be ridiculous, because the inner temple will literally teach you whatever you need to learn. Because again, it's your own higher self communicating with you. But in order for you to communicate with your higher self, you have to have a bridge to the higher self. I hope that makes sense. The inner temple acts as that pylon that you can use to enter into a more calm state of mind so that you can receive messages from your higher self, which is your subconscious mind. So in the day-to-day reality that we live in, our stresses, our obligations, our tasks, our 5 senses, etc., they keep us chained to a specific state of consciousness where it makes it difficult to leap into or come into contact with the higher self. The matrix operates, ladies and gentlemen, in a way where it tries to keep you from communicating and creating a relation with your higher self, which in essence, ladies and gentlemen, is just the authentic, real you, without all the nonsense, without all of the bullshit that you've accumulated in the matrix and the erroneous belief systems. Now, I just want to dovetail something in here really quickly, and then we'll continue about the inner temple. The matrix, ladies and gentlemen, keeps you in a state of consciousness known as the lower self. The lower self is the ego, essentially. Now, I've stated this in multiple videos about what the ego actually is. The ego is not being cocky and flaunting money and all this other stuff, having expensive cars. That's cocky. That's called being cocky or confident or greedy. But when most people hear the word ego, they think of those things. Someone who flaunts their success or is overly confident with his or herself. No. The ego, ladies and gentlemen, is the inauthentic you that you've molded yourself into after years of integrating with an artificial world that I call the Matrix. By interacting with the Matrix, going through school, watching the television, listening to your parents constantly, you name it, you have molded yourself into a version of yourself that is a reflection of the world around you. And unfortunately, the world around us doesn't mirror that of a holy divine nature. Unless you're looking at nature, unless you're looking at certain things, but when you're being taught by people within the Matrix, especially at a young age, that is not a reflection of the divine, at least in my opinion. Because the morals of the Matrix and its people do not resonate with something of a Kundalini nature or a divine nature. So we go through the motions of life. We get born into this world. We get thrown into the school system. We're forced to comply. And through compliance, we start to adhere to the dictates of the world around us, the authority figures, the teachers, and we start to mold ourselves into a false version of ourself that is in alignment with the Archon and its agenda. And that is the ego. That is the false self. Your ego creates a connection, ladies and gentlemen, to the Archon through a bastardization of your chakras. Some of this stuff is very complicated to explain, and I don't want to make this a very long video, but the inauthentic you, folks, which is the ego, is connected to the Archon. Because by becoming tethered to the lower self, you kind of sell yourself out, your energy, to the Archon. And the Archon feeds on your depleted chakras that stay depleted based on the lifestyle that you're living. Now, a lot more could be said about this, and I've talked about this in previous videos. The Archon has set up a scaffolding within the God Grid, which I'm not going to talk about the God Grid in this video. Go back and watch my older videos, especially my videos on the assemblage point, to learn more about that. But the Archon, ladies and gentlemen, has set up a scaffolding, an energetic fourth and fifth dimensional scaffolding within the God Grid that is connected to human beings and their luminous cocoons, or as I like to call, their auric fields, plural. There's an S on the end. We have much more than just one aura. Now, the inauthentic you is unconscious of this, but your energy field is connected to that scaffolding, and the Archon continually feeds on the energetic flares that your body produces through your energy field when you're stressed, when you're dominated by the day's tasks, etc. We are in a prolonged state. We are in a continual, perpetual state of entropy, of energetic loss here in the Matrix. And that energy that is lost through our energy field is fed through specific filaments and fibers, energetically speaking, outside of our aura. And it is fed to the Archon. The Archon uses Earth as an energy farm, folks. That's what this is. That is what reality has become. So I had to give a little bit of preliminary information before we continue about the inner temple, because understanding the inauthentic self is crucial to realizing that you need to do the inner temple so you can start letting go of the inauthentic, false aspects of yourself, so you can whittle them out, separate the wheat from the chaff, remove the dross from just you have to go through a period of distillation, is what I'm getting at. Distillation is a period of refinement. The inner temple helps you. It's like the distiller. It's like the power that turns the distiller on. It's the flame that heats the boil kettle, metaphorically speaking. So until you get rid of the inauthentic you, there are going to be foreign installments within your consciousness, within your body-mind complex, that are selling you out to the Archon. By living an inauthentic life, you will never really be able to grasp the true torch of the wounded healer and light it. Many people grab the torch of the healer, but they are unable to get it lit. And that's due to the sheer amount of foreign installations that are embedded into our psychosomatic memory banks. It's called being the egotistical, non-authentic you. We've got to remove those garbage installations. But how are you going to do that? How are you even going to know you have aspects of your mind that aren't even, that are installed in you, like Trojan horse weapon systems, like viruses? How are you going to know that if you don't have a system of self-reflection and introspection that can propel you into those states of consciousness where you can understand that you have these installations in your mind? You see, when you're dominated by the day, when you don't meditate, when you don't ever go inward into your mind and travel the vast labyrinth of your consciousness, you are in a state of mind, ladies and gentlemen, where you are never in contact with your unconscious. So you've got all this stuff in the back of your mind that you never come into contact with and know it's even there because you're dominated by the day. You're dominated by the day side, which is kind of a metaphor for just the worldly things. You've got to get the car tuned. You've got to make payment. You've got to go to the store. You've got to drop Timmy off at school at 7 in the morning and be back by 2 p.m. But you've got to stop and let the dogs out first. And then you've got to mow the lawn when you get home. And you've got to take a shower. You got to put Timmy to bed. You got to make dinner. You got to make breakfast. I mean, how do you have any time to do anything when you're dominated by the day? And the day side, or day side consciousness, ladies and gentlemen, is a term that I use to describe the mindset that people are in when they're dominated by the matrix and the obligations that they've made with it. This is called day side consciousness. I want you to become familiar with that term, that phrase, and store it and memorize it. Night side consciousness is the opposite. It's entering into the unknown. It's entering into the dark. It's you actually taking time to enter into your unconscious, to enter into your subconscious, to travel into the vast labyrinth of the mind that you have that you've never even made contact with because you're so dominated by day-side consciousness. So the night-side consciousness is everything that's in the dark, everything that's in the subconscious, in the abyss, the deepest layers of the mind. So I really hope you understand that, because that's crucial for you to understand if you are going to evolve mentally. You're dominated by the day, and when you're dominated by the day and all the obligations, you never have the ability to reach back into all of the potential of your mind because you're so busy on the surface that you don't know what lies beneath. And unfortunately, we live in a world where there's a lot of bullshit that's been plugged into us at a young age, and we've installed a ton of stuff into our minds in the form of beliefs, etc., that lie beneath our conscious mind. You see, you have a conscious, and then you have this typical state of mind that you're in now. But when you meditate, when you go into the inner temple, you start to loosen the grasp of the dayside consciousness, and you start to reach beneath you. You start to go underneath the surface of the water and learn what lies beneath. So when you meditate, you enter into certain brainwave states, ladies and gentlemen, that are different than the ones that you're in when you're, driving to work and all this other nonsense. You also achieve this when you do certain types of breath work, you name it. So the inner temple serves as it's a form of meditation that will allow you to calm your brain down, change your brain waves. It'll allow you to come into contact with your unconscious and subconscious mind. It'll allow you, ladies and gentlemen, to take a much-needed vacation from the realm of the ordinary. And it'll give you it's like entering into your command center, finally. In your inner temple, that's where you plan your magic. That's where you plot your life. I mean, come on, folks. The inner temple is like your home. Imagine living life without a home. Imagine living life homeless. Living meal to meal. It would be horrible. I'll be right back, folks. I've got a a stray cat that just walked by that I feed that's hungry. I'll be right back. All right, guys. So I believe I was talking about living without a home and how the inner temple is like your home. Imagine what life would be like without a house, a place to recover, a place to unwind, a place to plan things, a shelter. The inner temple is that shelter. And I cannot stress the importance of it enough. The idea, I can't speak, the thought or the idea that people even practice magic without an inner temple exercise is incredible to me, because all magic takes place within the mind. The physical objects that we use, folks, in magic are just tools that we use to channel information into our subconscious. They are tools that we use to focus our minds because our minds are so distracted or distractible. That is why all great magicians, they will eventually get to a point where they don't need any tools other than their mind, their inner temple. So, for instance, a candle, when you do candle magic, for instance, let's just say you're doing a spell for romance. Maybe you get like a pink candle or a red candle and you anoint it with specific oils and herbs that are associated with romance. Maybe you called upon a Kabbalistic deity that's associated, maybe an archangel with romance. Maybe you invoked the power of Venus and operated or lit your candle during the day, an hour of Venus. There's all sorts of correspondences that you can use. These are all tools that you use to channel information into your subconscious. And when you finally light that candle, folks, what you're effectively doing is using the flame of the candle to spool or feed information into your subconscious that you want to find romance. You see, if you weren't to use the candle and you're a novice magician and you cast a spell for romance, there's a good chance that you would get distracted and your mind wouldn't stay continually focused on the spell. But when you do candle magic, for instance, and I highly recommend you use large glass candles for this, when you light them and the candle's constantly lit, you can actually go about your day, if you're home at least, around the candle, where it's safe. You can leave the candle lit and do your day's tasks. You can clean the house, you could vacuum, you could maybe play a video game, whatever you're doing. But as long as that candle is visible to your mind, even if you're doing something else, you're injecting the intention into your subconscious through the symbolism of the flame. And there's a good chance every time you glance at the flame, you in your mind go, okay, romance. I'm focused on romance. It's like a pylon that you use to constantly keep your mind anchored on a specific intention that you injected into the spell. I hope that makes sense. But due to the fact that we're so distracted here in the Matrix, we need things like physical tools. We need candle magic. Accidentally just stepped on my dog's tail. Sorry, Karma. We need these things. You guys want to go in? Go on. These things can be of great assistance on our journey towards becoming greater magicians. And a magician, ladies and gentlemen, is basically a master psychologist. It's an individual who has completely gained mastery over his or her mind to the ability where they can now manifest things at will. So, in order for us to get to that point, though, we have to become clear. We've got to clear our mind of all the garbage nonsense. And I don't need to hear anything from anybody about how you don't have anything in your mind. If you're listening to this video right now, you have got installations in your mind that do not belong there. It is a cause and effect, simple. It's just, that's the way it, if you've grown up in the Matrix, that's your current situation. I'm still finding belief systems that are in my mind that are non-beneficial to my life that I didn't even know were there. And if you don't understand the ramifications of beliefs on your life, beliefs create everything. They instruct the subconscious mind on what to create in your reality. So unfortunately, if you're listening to this for the first time and you've never watched my other videos on the subconscious and magic and beliefs, you probably don't even know what the hell I'm talking about. You've got to go back and watch all of my videos. In order for you to understand the things that I'm talking about, especially when it comes to magic, you've got to watch them videos, you've got to listen to them, just absorb the information. I also highly suggest reading Philip Cooper's books. Been suggesting those books for years, folks. So we've got to become clear. We've got to remove the nonsense from our minds that, again, you don't even know it's in there. And that's how ingenious the mind control is. The mind control pushes things into your subconscious and you forget about them, or you don't even know they're there. So you have belief systems that create your reality, because beliefs do create your reality, because they instruct the subconscious mind to create things in your reality. It's called the law of attraction. That's the real law of attraction. It's your beliefs in your subconscious. It's not all this fairy dairy bullshit. It's your own mind. That's the law of attraction. Your subconscious mind creates your realities, or your reality, and it does so through your belief systems. And that's why I'm constantly talking about locating your core beliefs. John Kreider has a book called Magnum Opus where he teaches you how to do this. I highly suggest doing the John Kreider exercises from Magnum Opus on locating your core beliefs while inside of your inner temple. Any introspective process, any magical process, you are going to get so much more out of it from going into your inner temple first and then doing your meditations or whatever it is that you're doing. So I have a video here on the Patreon page about the inner temple. It's about 30 minutes long, I believe. Maybe it's like 20. I'm not 100% sure. I walk you through how to do it. That is the primer. The more you show up to your inner temple, the more you are going to become familiar with it. The interior, things will change inside your inner temple. Gateways will open. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. There goes the cat that I feed. Very cool little kitty. So the inner temple is a chamber inside of your mind. It's like a command center. And in the inner temple, you can come into contact with the 4 elements of Western magic, which are air, fire, water, and earth. Now, if you've listened to my video or watched it on the inner temple exercise, you'll know what I'm talking about. In your inner temple, it's a square room, and there's on each of the 4 walls a doorway or a gateway to each of the elements. So to the east, ladies and gentlemen, you have a yellow gateway, which is associated with the element of air. To the south, you have a red gateway associated with fire. To the west, you have a gateway associated with water, a blue gateway. And to the north, you have a green or a brown gateway, or whatever color you want to make it, associated with earth. I like keeping the door either brown or black. Black is also associated with the earth because it's a magnetic mixture of all colors. And the earth is it's like a manifestation of solidity. So is the color black. So above you, there's a crown or a lantern, or not a lantern, what am I saying? It's like a chandelier of sorts that's shaped like a crown. This connects you to God. And beneath you, I'm not going to get into the cube in this video. I've talked about that in recent videos, but the inner temple is a way for you to come into contact with the God energy, the female energy of the earth, which is representative of a cube when you're doing a pentagram ritual. And I don't want to get into that. I shouldn't have even brought it up. Let's just focus on the 4 elements in this video. The inner temple allows you to interact with the 4 elements. So you can, in your meditation of the inner temple, you can walk through the yellow gateway to the east and go into an air temple where you can learn from the element of air. You can also balance out your airy qualities while in the air temple by doing specific rituals that the element will teach you. You see, in order for you to be able to do this, you're going to have to realize that your imagination is the most magical thing in the world. A lot of people have contacted me about the inner temple and they're so confused. They don't know they let their programmed minds get the best of them. So they'll go into the inner temple, and instead of listening to what the elements are telling them within the temple, they'll contact me and ask me, oh, is this right? Did I do this right? Is it okay to enter this temple? Is it okay to do this? Is it okay to do that? I don't want to fuck anything up. Ladies and gentlemen, you're communicating with your higher self. You can't fuck it up. The inner temple is a place where there's no miscommunications or confusion. It's a place where you can finally work out the problems in your life. Stop beating yourself up. There's not a right and a wrong way to do this. Let the temple speak to you. Let your higher self speak to you. Now, there's also a well in the middle, a pool of iridescent fluid in the middle of the temple. This connects you to the subconscious mind. You can scry in this reflective pool, and it's going to become important for you later on down the road to work with the fluid in this pool, because you're going to use this energy or this fluid to actually push subconscious energy through all of the 4 elemental gateways when you cast a spell. So to learn more about that, you need to read The Magician by Philip Cooper. You're also going to want to try to pick up a copy of The Inner Temple of Magic, which is an exceptionally difficult book to find. It's by Philip Cooper as well. So I could go on literally and talk for 6 hours straight about the inner temple and not even begin to tip or scrape the tip of the iceberg about why it's so important and all the things you can do. So you're going to want to lay down and do the inner temple exercise. You let your visualization blossom. Don't try to force anything when you're trying to visualize the door that leads to the inner temple. And in order to understand this, again, you're going to have to go back and watch the inner temple exercise video where I explain how to do this. Once you've done it once, it becomes very easy to re-enter the temple. And I highly suggest entering into your temple every day for at least a week straight. And then you can back off and do it once every other day. But I highly suggest for even a month, if you can do it every day before you go to sleep, for just, even if it's just for 2 minutes. Go into your inner temple with your eyes closed, look around, maybe put your hand inside the pool in the middle of the temple, walk through each of the elemental gateways, get familiar with it, and you'll find that the more you enter into the inner temple, the more things will change. For instance, when I first went in, my inner temple was very simple. It was bland. It was just a very simple room. But I noticed the 3rd or 4th time I came in there, certain things had been placed in specific positions. New things were there. There were inscriptions on the wall that I hadn't noticed the first time I entered. And at one point, the inner temple went from a 1-story building to a 2-story building. And now I have around the, how would I explain this? So I have the bottom floor where I have the pool in the middle of the temple, and then I have the 4 elemental gateways. Well, I have stairs on each of the cardinal points, north, south, east, and west. I have stairs that I can walk up in my inner temple, and there's a 2nd floor where above each of the elemental walls, there's a room with supplies associated with each of the elements. So there's specific gems located on the northern wall above the elemental gateway. There are certain books and things that I can do. There's a desk in each of these rooms as well where I can study the elements. I mean, unfortunately, without some type of 3D rendition, I'm not going to be able to accurately describe what my temple looks like, but that's the beauty of it. No temple is the same. Everybody's is different. So, yours might not even be a room surrounded by walls, ladies and gentlemen. It might be a cathedral. It might be a circular, it might be in the middle of the woods, and it might be in the middle of a bunch of trees, a perfect circle in the middle of the trees, and there might be a fire going, and there might be, use your imagination. You can even, And I've done this as well. Mine can take on a fantasy form as well as like a futuristic form. I've gone into my inner temple at times at the flash of at my own whim, like I can't speak, excuse me. I've experienced my inner temple in a futuristic way as well, where there's like elevators, and instead of I'm not even going to get into it. I don't want to put too many thoughts into your mind because I want you to experience it yourself. Now, why is it important that there's an elemental gateway on each wall? Well, the 4 elements, ladies and gentlemen, are what create your reality. So by working with each of the elements, you start to make a alliance with the fundamental energies, the primordial energies that not only make you who you are, but have woven together to create the reality around you. You are literally coming into contact with the fundamental building blocks of reality. Each of the 4 elemental gateways also represents a specific moon phase. For instance, the east represents the new moon, the south represents the first quarter, the west represents the full moon, and the north represents the last quarter. This is all associated with the encircled cross. You've got to go back and watch my encircled cross video here on the Patreon page to understand this. Understanding the encircled cross and integrating it into your mind is going to allow you to understand why the inner temple is so important, because the inner temple, ladies and gentlemen, is literally a 3-dimensional encircled cross that can be turned into what's known as the cosmic sphere. So you have the 4 elemental gateways, and each gateway you can walk through. So when I walk through the air gateway, I'm taken to a completely different land where I come into contact with my air temple. And in my air temple, I can learn about the air. I communicate with the element, and it teaches me how to do specific things to cleanse the airy qualities out of my system that are imbalanced. This is all associated with the pentagram as well. You need to learn the pentagram rituals. If you can do the pentagram ritual in tandem with the inner temple exercise, you now have a fundamental building block that can propel you into states of consciousness and self-induced evolution that would blow your mind. So to get away from that, the air temple stuff, I want to talk about the fire temple really briefly. About a year ago, I was going through some incredibly challenging situations in life. I had reached a point where I was starting to become somewhat depressed. It was affecting my ability to sleep. I was, pretty afflicted by this for quite some time. And I knew that something had to be done quick, otherwise this could have potentially turned into something pretty bad. So every day, for about an hour, sometimes up to 2 or 3 hours, I would enter into my inner temple, and I would travel through the southern gateway into the fire kingdom, and I was taken to my fire temple. In my fire temple, when I first walked through the fire temple or fire gateway to the south, the elemental gateway of fire, years ago when I first did this exercise, I was teleported to a cave. And that's all I'm going to say. This cave is thousands of feet up along a stone wall, and it's like this elaborate palace at this point that's associated with the element of fire. And I have a bed in my fire temple where I can rest, and it's just incredible. The fire temple is the one temple I've worked with most, because of what I've needed it for. But let me get away from that. All I'm going to say is go into your own temple, your own inner temple, and then go into each of the elemental gateways and see where they take you. It might be a mansion for you that you're taken to. You might be taken to the moon by walking through your fire temple. I don't know. But for me, it's a cave. And in this cave, there's a roaring fire in the middle of it. And for a long time, ladies and gentlemen, while I was going through this depression, I would go into my inner temple, go into the southern gateway, get teleported to my fire temple, and I would sit in front of the fire in the middle of the cave, and I would allow it to comfort me. I would envision the heat entering into my bones and healing me. I would cast specific spells around this fire. I had, it's just incredible all the things that I did in that fire temple, and I'm not even going to get into anything other than telling you about the fire in the middle. I discovered and made contact with the elemental king of fire while inside of my fire temple. And that king showed me how to use the element of fire to reinvigorate my body with health during times of stress and turmoil. I mean, there are so many beautiful things that I've done with the inner temple, and I want you to experience them because they can drastically affect your life for the better. There's another stray cat that's walking up to me right now. Hey, kitty. Hi, bud. So these temples they're platforms that you can use to balance out specific qualities about yourself. And without the inner temple, ladies and gentlemen, you're not going to have a place to contemplate the stresses of the day. You're not going to have a place to come to change your life for the better. I've never seen this cat get this close to me before. Kitty. Hi, kitty. What you doing? So, yeah, the inner temple is the foundational. It's the most important part of my system because it's a place for you to anchor your conscious mind. Hey! All right, guys. So apologies for that. I don't know if you heard me yell, hey, but my dog jumped through the door to try to chase that cat. So now that we're back to normal, excuse me, I don't know where I was going with that. I forgot what I was talking about, but I believe I was talking about how important the inner temple is. It is a place where you can anchor your conscious mind to your subconscious. And this is really important because currently, ladies and gentlemen, there is a schism, a lack of communication between our conscious mind and our subconscious. And unless we have a methodology to communicate with our subconscious, how are we going to bridge that schism and merge the conscious mind with the unconscious and the subconscious and create balance within our subconscious? So you might be wondering why or how is the inner temple a bridge to our subconscious? Well, ladies and gentlemen, the language of the subconscious is symbolism, and the inner temple is perfected symbolism, because it is built upon the foundational building blocks of the encircled cross. And the encircled cross is probably the most important symbol that you could ever learn for reprogramming your subconscious. You can invoke the symbol of the encircled cross and bring it into your mind and hold it there. And just doing that alone will help balance your mind, because the encircled cross represents the 4 cardinal points. It represents God. It represents also the 4 fundamental laws of physics. It represents, ladies and gentlemen, the 4 cycles of the moon. It represents the wheel of the zodiac. It represents the cell as well. You have to watch my video on the encircled cross. It can also be turned from a 2-dimensional image into what's known as the cosmic sphere. And I believe I discuss how that's done in my video on pentagram rituals. So, got a truck coming, folks. So, for instance, when you look at the encircled cross, you see the 4 cardinal points. You see where all the 4 lines intersect in the middle. That is the middle of your inner temple. That is the well in the middle. That's the subconscious. And the subconscious uses the 4 cardinal points of the 4 elements to create your reality through your beliefs. What do you think each of the 4 gateways represent? The pool represents the middle, the you, the God self, the subconscious. And then the 4 elemental gateways are the cardinal points. Now, once you get good at magic and you learn how to work with the inner temple, and you learn how to work with the fluid in the middle of the temple, you'll learn how to take that fluid, which again represents the middle point on the encircled cross, and you'll learn how to take that fluid and direct it with your mind and your magic through each of the elemental gateways or 4 cardinal points on the encircled cross. So what essentially the inner temple represents is a very elaborate, modified and upgraded version of the encircled cross. So it's a temple built upon that symbol. And it's probably the most important symbol for the magician to use because it represents the creation of everything. There's nothing more powerful than the encircled cross other than the cosmic sphere, which is a upgraded version of the encircled cross. It's not necessarily upgraded, but it's turned from a 2-dimensional image to a 3-dimensional image, and I'm not going to get into that in this video. So the language of the subconscious is symbolism. The inner temple is pure symbolism. And when you go in there, you're speaking literally to your subconscious mind. Because the architecture of the encircled cross is literally encoded spiritually, mentally, etc. into your inner temple. Your inner temple is an interactive mental projection of the encircled cross that allows you to create a bridge from your conscious mind to your subconscious and actually begin to create a relationship with it. And in doing so, your power will increase 10,000-fold. Right now, most human beings go through their lives without a connection to their subconscious. And because of that, there's a lot of things that happen in their lives that aren't really in congruent alignment with their desires and conscious needs. So people wonder why things go wrong in their lives. They wonder why things are hectic. It's more often than not directly related to some type of erroneous information that's in their minds that they don't even know exists. I hope that makes sense. So by tuning into the encircled cross, by tuning into the inner temple, by working with it consistently, you create a pylon that connects you to your higher mind. The more you work with your higher mind, the more you work with your subconscious, the more you work with the elements, the more you work your magic, the more you invite those perfected states of consciousness into your daily reality. And you start to align your conscious life or your daily waking dayside reality with the perfected symbolism of the inner temple, the encircled cross. So essentially it's like, how would I explain it? Imagine right now your life is like a big ball of knots, and those knots are all the issues in your life. But the more you go into your inner temple, the more the perfected symbolism and just interacting with your mind helps loosen those knots. And before you know it, all of the knots are removed from your life, your conscious reality, because you've worked with your higher mind, worked out your issues, and worked out all the kinks. So the inner temple is like a hologram of perfection that you get to walk into and allow those perfected energies to integrate into your mind. And you take a little bit of that perfected energy back with you into your conscious life after you've gone into your inner temple. And the more of that energy that you grab and harvest from the inner temple exercise, the more of it becomes solidified. It becomes solidified into your body, into your mind, and you begin to completely harbor those energies in your waking life. It's like a what's the word I'm looking for? I just had it. It's like the inner temple, ladies and gentlemen, it's basically like the scales of justice. The inner temple is how you recalibrate your internal compass. The internal compass is something that I've talked about extensively on my videos. The inner compass is you getting your intuition back. It's you getting your mind back. And there's a good chance you've lost your mind to the matrix in many ways. This is not me trying to point fingers or be judgmental. It's me being completely realistic and choosing not to force feed you bullshit. So many people want to be fed bullshit. Like there's some type of, I don't know. It's like, why would you rather hear something that's not true than actually hear the truth? Yes, sometimes the truth is hard to swallow, but we live in a harsh, predatory world, and there's no time for being a baby. You got to wake up, grow up, and integrate your higher mind into your current situation, into your who you've become needs to be aligned with your higher self, but you need a system to do that, and that's what the inner temple is. By working with the elements, folks, you're essentially balancing out the fundamental building blocks of who you are, because you are a weaved together spirit anchored in flesh that is a reflection of the four elements fused with spirit. Going into the inner temple initiates the spirit, awakens it, and then you go into the inner temple and work with the four elements, and you begin to balance out imbalances in your life because of the effect that it's just incredible. I can't even begin to express how powerful this exercise is. And once you use it in tandem with your grounding exercises or whatever else, I mean, you've got a powerful tool, folks. I'm just going to say that. You can also, ladies and gentlemen, once you become proficient with the elements, you can start to invoke the planets, you can start to invoke the planets into your inner temple. So planetary magic is a very, very common thing. Unfortunately, most people don't know how to do it. Unfortunately, most people don't actually understand what planets are when it comes to magic. They're symbols. They're like filing cabinets that contain specific energies that we can use that harbor correspondences. I'm not going to get into, excuse me, folks, I just had a brain fart, but the planets can be used in your inner temple. You can start to use planetary magic, and that is exceptionally powerful. However, I do not suggest that you work with the planets until you've created a solid foundation with the elements. There's no point in invoking the power of Saturn if you haven't fixed the imbalances in your elemental system. And your whole entire body and mind is an elemental system. It's a mixture of multiple different cosmic forces, not just the elements, but the elements are like the foundation of who you are. So by working with the elements, by going into your water temple, for instance, you can start to work with your emotions and delete emotional issues that you probably don't even know you have, but you'll become exposed to them when you work with the elements. Once you figure out your element, the elemental you, and fix the imbalances, then you start doing the planetary magic. So for me personally, when I invoke a planet into my inner temple, I adorn my actual physical temple where I do a lot of my magic with symbolism of the planet, maybe a sigil or some incense associated with the planet. And then when I'm in my inner temple, I invoke it above the pool. It's like a hologram of the planet shows up above the well or the pool in the middle of my inner temple. And then I walk through that hologram, and it takes me to a planetary temple associated with whatever planet I'm working with. So the alchemy that you can do with this is incredible. One of the planets that I was working with, Mars, maybe about a year ago, maybe less, maybe a little bit more, taught me it taught me a specific ritual using a specific herb associated with Mars. It taught me how to do this elaborate bath ritual where I made a bath consisting of herbs and essences of Mars. And then I went into that bath while in my inner temple and allowed the herbs to draw out imbalances in my Marsarian qualities, because at the time I was having some severely exacerbated anger issues due to what was going on in my life at the time. And Mars is associated with war and even anger. So working with Mars, you can learn from Mars on how to balance out your anger. And I used this specific bathing ritual to pull out stored, accumulated tension in my body and anger that I had allowed to become part of my musculoskeletal system. The anger was literally contained in my muscle memory. I had to work out the muscle memory entrainment program in order for the anger to not react or operate on an unconscious loop. I hope that makes sense. We've got to exercise the demonic qualities out of our system. And I'm not saying demonic like there's some type of spirit in you or all this other bullshit. No, Demonic, ladies and gentlemen, is a term that I use to classify specific energies that we harbor in our systems that are non-beneficial to our systems. Demons are not evil spirits waiting to attack you. Demons, ladies and gentlemen, the true demons, are parts of our energetic system that are imbalanced, that cause havoc in our lives, and we more often than not don't even know that we have these demonic qualities because they operate behind the scenes of our conscious mind. So you need a system to exit willfully and forcefully out of your conscious mind so that you can get into a more meditative state. And there's nothing better than the inner temple. You can sit and try to meditate and imagine a white light around you and whatever that most people do, but there's so many meditations out there that unfortunately they're well intended, but they just do not have the power of the inner temple, because the inner temple is it's your fortress of solitude, folks. It's a place where you get to go. It's like the Bat Cave, or every superhero pretty much has a refuge or a hideout. Your inner temple is your hideout. Anytime Superman needed to really do some thinking, which Superman represents Sirius. He represents the serpent. That's why he has a giant S on his fucking breastplate. He represents an individual with the Christ consciousness activated. But, Superman would, whenever he was stressed out or needed to reflect on things or to really plan something, he would leave and go to the Fortress of Solitude, which is pretty cool. I mean, if you look at the Fortress of Solitude, it looks like a bunch of selenite crystals, and selenite is associated with higher thinking and the angelic sphere. So there's so much symbolism just in that in Superman. And there's a lot of symbolism in the fact that all superheroes, for the most part, have some type of hideout that they go to. That's all inner temple stuff, folks. That all those temples represent the subconscious. So I really hope you'll do these exercises. And if you can't do them, it just means that you're making excuses. Because if you have time to watch a television show, but you don't have enough time to work with your inner temple, then you're just being a hypocrite. I've gotten it so proficient now, and I've done it so often that I can do it. I can enter my inner temple while I'm talking to you right now, and literally do something in my inner temple while I'm talking to you. I can do it with my eyes open. And that's really crucial, because once you have to master the inner temple, ladies and gentlemen, before you can cast truly effective magic, because you've got to cast your spells in the inner temple and direct the energy from the middle of the pool in the middle, which represents your subconscious. You've got to direct that through the 4 elemental gateways. When you can direct your subconscious energy through those elemental gateways, the elemental gateways will take your subconscious intention and materialize it through the 4 elemental cardinal points. I hope that makes sense. So, where was I going with that? You've got to learn to do these things. I totally just had a brain fart. There was something I wanted to mention there. You can also, do Kabbalistic work within the inner temple. And it acts as it also, ladies and gentlemen, acts as an on switch for your magic. And without an on switch, your magic can really be non-beneficial. You have to have some type of ritual that you use to tell your subconscious that you're about to practice magic. And then you have to have an off switch. There's an on switch and an off switch, and that's what essentially, not just the inner temple, but especially the pentagram rituals represent. So when you do a pentagram ritual, you're invoking the elements. When you close the ritual and when you invoke the elements, that's the on key. You're telling your subconscious mind that you're about to exit your normal consciousness and practice magic. And when you're done casting your spells, you instruct the subconscious mind that you're done by banishing the pentagrams and banishing the elements and doing everything in reverse. And this is to tell your subconscious mind that you're done. Because if you don't tell your subconscious, that you're done, you can notice or experience glitches, so to speak, because you haven't opened and closed things. I hope that makes sense. Magic is no joke. It's the art and science, if you will, of controlled thinking. It is the true lost art of psychology. It is the alchemist's operating system. Another thing you can do, folks, is you can go into your inner temple, make contact with your subconscious, and then in your physical life or reality, you can make powerful potions. I make tiger's eye elixirs in my inner temple. While I make them in the physical, and then I consume them. And in my inner temple, I see my entire body lighting up with light and getting healed when I drink the potion. I hope that makes sense. Now, another powerful thing that you can do, folks, and I really should write a book on the inner temple. I'm considering doing it because there's so much that, unfortunately, even after an hour, I've left out. But when you work with the inner temple, one thing you can do is you can go into each of the elemental gateways and ask the elements for a stone which can represent the element. So, each element has different stones that are associated with it. The elements can teach you or tell you a stone to get or purchase or locate that represents each of the elemental gateways. So I have 4 very specific gems that represent each of the elements. And I use those gems in ritual, but I also, ladies and gentlemen, can carry them with me. If I'm trying to work elemental magic of air, I'll carry the air gem. If I'm doing elemental magic of fire, I'll carry the fire gem. You can carry these with you. And if you've done enough work with each of the elements, folks, all of the work that you've done with the elements gets contained within the stone. And this is kind of hard to explain, and I'm going to try to explain how that works. There really isn't much magic in the stone itself other than its mineral matrix and the elementals that are contained within the stone that you can contact. The elemental stone that you locate or purchase that represents each of the elements becomes powerful, predicated upon how often you go into your inner temple. The elemental gateway stone of each element is a container, if you will, of all the memories of you going into your inner temple and working with that specific element. So when I carry a water gem around, if I'm trying to balance out my emotions during the day, every time I touch that stone or remember that it's in my pocket, you name it, or every time I hold it in my hand and do breath work, it reminds me of all the work I've done with that particular element in my inner temple. And I, like that, just bam, I remember all the lessons that I've learned from that element. The stone represents a reminding tool to the subconscious of the efforts you've made to change. And the more you work with each element, the more you'll be able to gather information from the element, and the closer you'll get to the elemental kingdom of that particular element. And those elementals can actually live in each of the stones that you have that represent each of the 4 elements. I know that may sound kind of crazy, ladies and gentlemen, but the elements contain what's known as elementals. And elementals are living spiritual creatures that are contained and live within the elements. So the element of earth has entire hierarchies of elementals. The water does as well. Fire does as well. So does air. And when we get proficient with working with the elements, we can actually invite them into our lives and make relationships with these entities. They're contained within you, ladies and gentlemen. So another great thing to do, folks, or why it's important to get 4 stones, is that you can leave them in your bedroom, if you will, or wherever you are often, and then every time you glance at them, you go, oh yeah, that's the elemental stone, and it takes you mentally to that particular elemental realm, even if it's just for a brief second. These are keys. They are keys that remind the subconscious of the efforts that you've taken to change. Just like I mentioned at the beginning of this video with the candle, and why the candle is important, why physical tools in magic are important. It's a reminding tool. that beams your intention back to you like a mirror. The stones do that as well. You can also take gem baths, elemental baths. The possibilities are endless, ladies and gentlemen. You've just got to be willing to use your imagination and have fun with this. There's no right and wrong way to do this. So many people have contacted me after they've done the inner temple. Oh, I'm worried I didn't do it right. What's gonna happen? And all this other nonsense. Ladies and gentlemen, the inner temple represents the sacred space of the heart. There's no right and wrong way to do this. Stop beating yourself up. If anything, be thankful that in doing the inner temple exercise, it exposed you to the fact that you're neurotic. No offense. The fact that you had to contact me because you're worried that you did something wrong while you meditated, you should be thankful that the inner temple exposed that to you. Think about that. You were so worried when you were just communicating with yourself in the state of meditation that you thought you did something wrong and that your own mind was going to punish you. The inner temple just exposed you to that glitch. Change it. The inner temple is a place where you go to shower yourself in love. You go there and you literally shower yourself with much needed self-love. The system does not want you to love yourself, ladies and gentlemen. The system does not want you to love yourself. I repeat, the system does not want you to fucking love yourself. The system wants you to doubt yourself, not believe in yourself, it wants you to be constantly caught up with your self-image and never really happy with yourself or the way your life is going. Think about that for a minute. That is pure evil. You are a soul bound to flesh. You have the ability to walk around, think. You have the ability to create dreams for yourself and go about achieving them. What are you so depressed about? Depression is not natural. But overthinking in a crazy world like the one we reside in will create engrams in your mind that become unconscious loops that affect your life. That's why you're not happy. You're constantly comparing yourself. Comparing yourself to the system's standards. And will my friends like me if I do this? And do I look good in these jeans? Does my ass look good? And all this nonsense. You've got to unplug. Unless you want to live by the world's standards, but you will never achieve anything great, in my opinion, and these are just my opinions, but you will never achieve anything great by trying to conform to the energetic configuration that the Matrix wants for you. The Matrix has shifted your assemblage point, manipulated your energy field, and you are constantly in a state of self-reflection, but not good self-reflection. You're constantly doubting yourself in a state of self-reflection. You're constantly looking... I'm not even going to get into it, ladies and gentlemen. It's already been an hour, and I don't want to make this too much longer. We've got to wake up, but we need a system to do so, and the inner temple represents that. But so many people will listen to this, and it'll fall on deaf ears, unfortunately. A lot of people don't want to do stuff like this. They don't want to do the meditative work. They want to just consume potions and try to evolve their consciousness through the material realm because that's all they know. But there are layers of your mind that no potion will expose you to unless it's a incredibly powerful potion, like a Refortify mana potion, which contains certain things that aren't really considered, I'm not going to say legal, but I'm not even going to get into the mana potions in this video. There are specific physical potions that can be brewed with ingredients that can be obtained that nature grows, that sometimes we have to extract certain alkaloids out of them and whatnot. There are specific potions that can be used in the physical world that will expose us to our mental imbalances, but I'm not going to talk about those in this video. Unfortunately, I don't even think most people even watch this video to this point. Even here on Patreon, I'll make these videos and sometimes I'll only get like 7 views. All this time and effort just for a few views, but I know the people that watch these videos enjoy them, and I'm going to keep doing what I do. I love all of you. Not trying to point my fingers at patrons in any way, shape, or form. I just wish the watch retention on these videos was higher. But it is what it is. I'm going to start wrapping this one up, folks. On behalf of your health, I hope that this message has moved you to some extent. I hope that this message can inspire you to do the inner temple exercise. And not only do I hope that it inspires you, but I hope that it inspires you enough to continually do it to the point where you become proficient at it. Because once you become proficient at it, you will love this exercise. It'll be a place that you can enter if you experience stress. It'll be a place that you can enter before you do your magic, and you will get 9 billion times more out of your magic if you do this inner temple exercise and become proficient with it. I'm not saying that you can just do this once or twice and become some expert spellcaster. But through through repetition, you will become very, very efficient at working with the elements. And that's key. That's crucial to becoming a magician, ladies and gentlemen. And magicians aren't people who wear weird hats and chant mumbo jumbo at 3 a.m. on full moons. Some people might. But real magicians are just master psychologists. They're people who have figured out the imbalances in their minds that are causing their lives to be a wreck. Master magicians know that the mind literally creates his or her reality, and master magicians know that if there is an imbalance in his or her reality, there is some type of mental work that needs to be done so that it can be exorcised out of their system. What needs to be exorcised, you might be asking? More often than not, the problems in our lives, not always, but often, are caused by bogus information that has been pumped into our mind from the culture that we live in, and it's been pumped into our mind for so long that it becomes a belief system. And those belief systems become unconscious entities, if you will, that continually spool in our unconscious databanks, such as, but not limited to, the belief of aging. Do you know that your belief about time and what time is and how you interact with time dictates how you age, ladies and gentlemen? Did you know that? And did you know that by changing your definition of time, you can change how you age? And I'm not just saying, how would I explain this? So many people say, well, I can just change the definition. I can just change my belief about time. Okay, well, I'll do that. And then they say that they did it and they're not experiencing any benefit. Do you know how difficult it is to change a belief? Changing a belief isn't just you telling yourself that you believe something different. Telling yourself that you believe that you have a different definition of time is not the same as actually changing the belief. Changing beliefs is incredibly difficult because it requires so much mental fortitude, so much exhaustion of resources to locate the beliefs for one, and then through systematic magic and effort, we change the beliefs. You just telling yourself that, I'm going to look at the way time, I'm going to change my definition of time. That's not actually changing the definition of time. Your definition of time is a belief about time. I hope that makes sense. I really do. For instance, just telling yourself that you can hold your breath for 2 minutes straight doesn't mean that you're going to be able to. But if you actually could do that, that would create the belief that you actually could. And beliefs that are backed up by factual evidence from your own self actually create subconscious beliefs. The subconscious mind has to actually believe something for you to actually integrate it and create a reality. Now I'm getting off on a subject that I don't want to really go into, ladies and gentlemen. I should probably start wrapping this one up. I want to finish up by saying, work with the inner temple, work with gems, work with the minerals, work with tiger's eye, work with serpentine, work with shungite, work with lodestones, work with different forms of jasper and bloodstone, work with pyrite, work with moonstone, work with these minerals, ladies and gentlemen. Start a garden, grow your own food, work with herbs, work with the elements of the earth. Once you work, working with the elements while simultaneously working with your inner temple, there's no limits on the amount of growth in alchemy that you can experience from the inner temple is profound. Unfortunately, we are literally just beginning to script the tip of the iceberg in relation to the Inner Temple. But I'm going to wrap this one up. I love you all, and until next time, peace be with you.